Hi everyone, thank you for joining us again for our series in this for this series where we're interviewing and speaking with our Speakers Collective members. I'm going to put some information in the chat function about support you can access if you are worried about your mental health. I've put the Hub of Hope in there and also information from the Samaritans and how to contact them any time of day throughout the year. Today I'm joined by Holly, who's going to talk about her lived experience of being neurodivergent as a parent and also as a carer to someone who's neurodivergent. So Holly is one of our Speakers Collective members and has been part of the organisation for a number of years now. So I'll pass over to you, Holly, to talk a bit about yourself and what drew you to be a member of the collective.
Hey, Chandy, thank you. So I first connected with the collective before lockdown, so it would have been 2020. And I was working in the mental health space with parents and sort of dealing and talking about the challenges around that, working with neurodivergence already. And I just really felt quite isolated actually in what I was doing and what I really wanted to be doing, which was more advocacy and reducing stigma and those kind of things, rather than private work in the sense of kind of just that kind of transactionary way of running a business and working and kind of spreading the word around reducing the stigma around sharing your personal experience. Is something that has always been a key feature of my work, is sharing my own personal lived experience of having mental health challenges. And then I subsequently have realised that actually my mental health challenges were directly related to my undiagnosed neurodivergence. So I have CPTSD and I'm also autistic. So I am neurodivergent in a kind of acquired way and inherited way, because it's really important for me to underline that neurodivergence is more than just ADHD and autism, as it is kind of very, very prevalent in the discourse. And neurodivergent is a much bigger picture than that. So yeah, I've been a member of the Speakers Collective for over 4 years, and it's just a wonderful organisation to be a part of. It gives me, we were just talking before the break, I do find it challenging to interact and engage with any of the aspects of my work, and because of my role as a parent carer for a disabled child. However, when I can interact with the Speakers Collective, when I can be present with them, it's always really wonderful experience. I've had some amazing speaking opportunities, but it's much more about than that. It is actually the community of support that Speakers Collective offers. That's why I joined, and I do get that all the time.
And you talked a little bit about it there, but what is it that you get from sharing your lived experience? Obviously, it's not easy to talk about the things we've been through and kind of like coming to terms as well, because one thing I heard you say there was the distinction between the acquired sort of neurodivergent element of your life, but also the stuff you were born with, and that so like autism is a condition that is from birth. How has that impacted on your own journey of like self-discovery, but also what you're talking about when you're meeting people?
Yeah, okay, lots there. So the importance for me in sharing my lived experience is that really I have carried so much shame throughout my whole life around things that have happened to me that have contributed to my PTSD, but also just shame around being who I am, and that kind of internalized narrative that there's been something wrong with me, that I somehow don't fit, that why am I struggling so much? Why are things so hard? Why can everyone else do it? So really having had those kind of questions, as well as kind of quite shameful and harrowing experience kind of happened to me as well. The kind of the combination of those two things really are just, it feels really freeing, to release that shame and to really articulate around the fact that there is, whatever has happened to you, whatever you've been through, however your brain works, there's nothing wrong with you. And I really can only know my own experience. Like, I have no idea what's going on in someone else's head or in someone else's life. So for me, it really just makes sense to frame that within my own experience. Like, sure, I know a lot of things about different conditions and different ways to help and support people and all those kind of things. But I think that's why I wanted to move more away to practically talking about neurodivergence and mental health, or actually doing something to support people who are experiencing neurodivergence and possibly poor mental health, rather than working one-to-one always with people trying to help them. I just felt like, yeah, we're kind of breaking down the barriers in a more kind of community and collective way was more aligned with my values and what I think is important.
And from your perspective, what are some of the challenges that disabled people and those who are neurodivergent face? And I guess linking it back to your own experiences of being a parent and also being neurodivergent, what are some of those big challenges that you've kind of witnessed and seen over the last couple of years?
Yeah, and I pull from my own personal experience, but also in kind of from things that I've, run and events that we've run with the community interest company that I work with. But I think really it's like isolation, loneliness, not being heard, not being believed, not being listened to. And I think particularly with the neurodivergence, and it being, in any invisible disability, it's the people not recognizing how difficult or how challenging it really can be. I mean, you would know this, I'm sure, with some of your challenges and your lived experiences that you face. It's that there's an expectation that if you can't see something, it becomes the person who is disabled to explain why it's so hard, or what's the challenge, rather than just being believed on, so this is really hard for me, or I can't do that right now, or it's that you always have to justify it and explain it, and it's really exhausting, it's really tiring. And that's what I have as a parent, in the sense that nobody believes how challenging it is at home, and because I am who I am and I present how I am, it feels impossible to imagine some of the challenges or experiences that we face in our home environment, for example, because I'm I'm a former teacher, I'm an educator, I'm a yoga teacher, all of these things that I do they ease the path of being the parent carer and being neurodivergent, and they make things sometimes smoother, but they don't take away the fact that I'm disabled and my child's disabled. And so there's always going to be challenges present. And I think that's for me, that's the key, because people expect people to be able to get on with things, and why can't you just do, it's like, well, I just can't, and quite basic things. So I have very, very low support needs, and I'm very able to do lots of things, but there are some very simple tasks that involve certain aspects of executive functioning, for example, that I just can't do. And that interface is very difficult for people to understand and have compassion for.
And I've seen it a lot in the media recently. There have been 2 occasions where people have got assistance dogs or guide dogs, and they've been excluded from shopping centres because they've been assumed a certain way, or they've made assumptions made about the disability. And I guess, yeah, as you said, like with it being a hidden disability and it's not something you can see, there isn't like there's an on-off switch where as soon as we get home we can turn a switch off, and when we're kind of non-disabled, we're always disabled, and it doesn't go away. And with challenges that can, like, especially with like executive functioning, those tasks can come suddenly. It's not like we know they're going to be on a certain day and we can plan for them, I guess. For you, what kind of like, how are you looking after your mental health? What are the things that you do to kind of help you stay, like, I want a better term for grounded, but like, how do you look after yourself and make sure that you're not reaching on that level of burnout?
Yeah, good question. Honestly, it's really, really hard. My kids stopped going to school in February, so I've had to really kind of reevaluate and change. Perhaps what maybe I used to do. I am a very experienced and dedicated yoga practitioner, for example. So I've my capacity to be able to attend yoga classes is really reduced. So I guess, you know, what I always do is I prioritize my needs and I prioritize my kids' needs. You know, as a parent, I'm ultimately responsible for them, and ultimately keeping my child happy and supported does benefit myself also. So yeah, I mean, the yoga I do in different ways, in different forms. I do try to meditate most days, and I do that in whatever way and capacity I can do. I think a lot around meditation, there's a lot of rules, and you know, there's an expectation that you must do it in a certain way. And what I've really found over a decade of meditation and yoga practice and somatic practices is about doing it in the way that I can, rather than trying to do it in a particular way. I also dance a lot. I move when I can. I do that I sometimes put that on Instagram. But yeah, I crave freedom, and I find that the conditions of my life as a, you know, a disabled parent carer often feel very, very constricted. So I try and look for whatever little pieces and glimmers of freedom that I can find. And that's how I organize my working life. I reduce my working life as and when. So I prioritize my mental health over my ability to earn. That in and of itself is a privilege, that I'm in a situation that I can do that. And I really recognize that. But I do make decisions based on that as well. So consequently, like, you know, I'm not very well off, you know, these days. However, emotionally, I am much better off than and in being a parent carer, I do have to prioritize that, like, because I have to have a level of groundedness. I have to have a level of emotional regulation. I have to be able to be present for my child because they need me to be that way. And without me being that way, then because they rely on my nervous system for co-regulation, then if I'm not regulated to a point, I'm not perfect, but if I can't ground myself, if I can't be present with her, then, you know, there's a knock-on impact on my child's mental health. So, you know, I'm always trying to titrate and balance that as well.
And just thinking in terms of the future and the work that you're working towards, just before we went live, we spoke about the not-for-profit that you're helping create and build.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of what your aspirations are for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this I'm a co-director of Neurodivergent Friends in Thanet, which is a community interest company that works. We operate in Thanet, which is where I live. It's Margate, Broadstairs, and Ramsgate. And our founder, Lux, they set this up really to meet their, you know, they identified that there was a gap. And they wanted to create a social environment where they were free to be themselves and who they were, after they'd realised that they were neurodivergent themselves. And yeah, it really kind of grown from there. At the minute, currently, we're funded. We run social media meetups in the evening once a month, and we're just about to start coffee mornings, which will be also once a month. And the vision is also that we then grow and we do creative programming and really support the neurodivergent community in our area in particular, but also, you know, thinking about reducing the stigma and changing the narrative around that. So one of the things that's really important for us in how we run and we organise the community interest company is that it's entirely neurodivergent led. So the directors are all neurodivergent, our facilitators are all neurodivergent, everyone that attends a meetup has to be neurodivergent, unless it's a carer or a support person that needs to come to, you know, to help person be in the room. We really tailor the meetups to accommodate neurodivergent needs. So we have, for example, like a traffic light system so that there is less pressure to on social interaction, so you can identify whether you're green and, you know, you're really up for engaging. You're yellow, you'd rather approach people yourselves, but you prefer not to be approached. And red is the sort of, please don't approach me, I just want to be able to be in the space. And I think we kind of put careful accommodations and processes around that, just to allow people to get to be in an environment. Because one of the kind of the thread of the neurodivergent experience, however you are neurodivergent, is the kind of the daily ongoing trauma or challenge around having to mask, to try and fit in, trying to pretend you're something you're not in order to be accepted. And in our events and our community, and already, but as we grow as well, that there is no need to pretend that you are somebody you're not. You really can be 100% exactly who you are, and that's really important for us.
Amazing. Just before we kind of draw this to a close, my final question is, thinking about disability and thinking about mental health and some of the challenges that we've talked about in the last couple of minutes, what can non-disabled people do to be an advocate for change and to kind of, I know that's a big question to ask, but is there one thing that you would kind of, if someone who was non-disabled said, how can I be an ally? How can I help? What would you say?
Big question. I do basically just speak up when you notice, or if you see that someone is struggling, or you witness that someone needs help. I don't think, I personally, but I don't think that, I don't have any expectation of anybody understanding my needs, but I do understand my needs. And so if I am to tell or express or to say what my needs are, it would be really helpful if people would try to help accommodate that, at that time. So I don't expect people to meet my needs, it is on me to meet my own needs, and it is on me to look after myself in lots of ways. But I do think just caring, I mean, this is more than one thing already, isn't it? That's not so much, but yeah, offering care or support, or even just, I said it to somebody about, even someone just looking at you with kind eyes when you are, struggling with your child who is struggling themselves, or you might be feeling or experiencing distress. Even just a smile, or just a kind face can have a dramatic impact, which is what they, kind of, all mental health trainings, it's the small gestures that can have such a valuable impact, because you don't know what's going on for anybody on that particular day or on that particular moment.
Thank you. I think that's a perfect way to draw this to a close. So thank you, Holly, for joining me today.
Thanks, Chandy.